So the way we're going to work together is I'm going to ask you occasionally to put things into the chat. So I hope you can put them into the chat and let me know how you're feeling at the moment. So Nicholas has just typed a message in. Please follow up and just say, hello, yes, Eddie, we're looking forward to the session. Oh, we can't stand it. It's a horrible idea. Whichever one you want. I'm just watching the chat. Yeah, we've got some hellos. Hi, Vicky. Good to see you. So I'd very much like this to be as much of an interactive session as possible, if that's okay with you. You've already had the introduction. So should we just get started? Is that a yes? I'm watching the chat. If I didn't see a yes, I'm not starting. It's going to be grim. This is the last session. So if you're not nice to me, I'll bore you and burble on and you'll all be late. Okay, let's get going. So I think I'm supposed to be looking at the whole area of what bundle of skills and behaviors and thoughts do you take away and put into practice from everything which we've done so far today. And I wasn't here all day, but I understand it's been terrific. Is that correct? So let me share my screen with you. And as I share my screen with you, I'll give you an idea of where we're going to go and what we're going to cover. And if you like it, we'll do it. And if you don't, oh, well, we won't. Here we go. So this is this. I hope I'm in the right place. Engagement reimagined. Okay. So you're looking at the screen and you're probably wondering what you're looking at. So I'll explain really briefly because I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I'm sharing my screen with you. I'm actually in a very strange room. The room looks a little bit like this. We'll be working mostly on this whiteboard up here at the top. In the olden days, before 2014, the room sort of looked like this. This is a photograph of the room which I used to teach in. And from above, there you go, there's the room. And we're going to go and start our session down here. So hopefully you'll be able to follow me through and we'll be able to have a great session. My plan is to work in 5 chapters, if that's okay with you. I hope I'm sharing it. Technology. It says you are sharing your screen. Yes, that's good. Okay, so my plan is to work in 5 chapters. The first chapter is why do anything different? That's chapter 1. That's over here. Then I'll move into what could we change to. Then I'll move into what should we change specifically about what we do. I'll share my own story because I have skin in the game. I've been trying to deliver learning, but to grown-ups. I only work with executives and oldies, but I've been doing it for quite a while. And I run a virtual business school, and we were forced because of globalization and demands from clients about application to actually change how we worked. So I'll explain that. And that will give me an insight, give you an insight into how you might work differently as well. And then we'll move on to understanding what you could do differently and then close. So that's my plan, which I put together before I met you. What I'm hoping you should expect is normally on one of these events, a normal sort of keynote, what happens is you end up getting the speaker, one-way broadcast, etc. Lots of slides, and then you get Q&A at the end. And then goodbye, good luck. Okay, I don't intend to do that. Shortly, I'm going to ask you what you would like me to cover. Because I put the plan together before I met you. We're together now. So I'm going to ask you in the chat to tell me what it is you would like me to cover. And then I'd also like, if it's possible, to spend some time understanding what you don't want us to spend time on, your greatest fears, the things you want us to avoid. And then we'll go through the chapters. At the end of each chapter, I'll ask for feedback, questions, and answers, and then we'll go to the next one. And we'll also share any surprises you've got so that we can actually work our way all the way through it. So that's my plan, if that's okay with you. I'm watching the chat. Loving the virtual room. Okay, I assume that's good. Okay, so what should we do? What did I promise? If you were a good person and you read the pre-conference stuff, you would have seen things like Eddie says he's going to connect with and highlights in the earlier parts of the conference. Okay. So you probably saw something like that. Yeah, okay, I'll do my best. You probably said I saw something about I'll explore and highlight new challenges and opportunities. And I would say something about location-independent working. I'll unpack the bundle of new ideas of what you need, and I will send you off confident. You always promise these things, but you've got to help me with this confidence one, okay? I'll send you off confident into the world. So that was what I promised. So you've got some sense of what I'd like to do. So the question comes over to you. So as you talk, I'll do my best to type so that we can be lined up. I want you to imagine that the next hour or so is absolutely fabulous. You learn, I don't know what you learn. It's all good stuff, literally brilliant stuff. What are your greatest hopes, which would make the next hour the best hour of the conference? In fact, the best hour of your entire life. So give me that a couple of those. I'll take the first 2 or 3 I get out of the chat and I'll type them in if that sounds okay. So anything specifically you want me to cover? Watching, it just says sounds good. That's not the one I want. If you don't go for the chat, you can't participate. If you don't participate, it's gonna be grim. Nope, no one's giving me any hopes. Any hopes, please? I hope it hasn't crashed. Here, I'll just type in here. Oh yeah, someone's coming through. Brilliant. Building a community in a hybrid working world. That sounds like a good one. I can do that. I've done that over a number of years. I'll show you exactly how to do that. We've got, my hope is I'll learn something new on engaging diverse. Oh, blimey, now they're going like crazy. Okay, so new diverse is the second one I'm going for. New diverse audiences. And then there's a couple more. There's one here about engaging safe space. Should I put safe space as the next one? Or yeah, I'll go safe space, and we can always have another one. Safe space. And the last one is, we're taking our blockers, trust-based. I'll put trust and blockers. Should I cheat on that one? Trust and blockers so we can get stuff done. Trust and blockers. Okay, and maybe just a final one. We've got new ideas, conversations, helping others, inclusivity. So let's go for new ideas open. And I'll pretend, with new ideas open, I'll pretend that the inclusivity thing goes in the trust and blockers, okay? Okay, so now I come to the second part of the conversation, which is, what don't you want me to waste your time on? What are your biggest fears? What is it which would make the next hour so dreadful you wish you'd gone to the dentist instead? Can we have some fears on that as well? So if you type them in the chat is to the right of the screen. Nothing in the chat yet. There's probably a delay in the software. Who knows? Fears, please. Fears. Never mind, come up. Okay, lack of relevance. Oh, that would be terrible. You get a speaker in and he spends all his time talking about stuff and it's totally irrelevant to higher education. That's not how you spell relevance, is it? Okay, I probably need to go back to higher education. Low energy, not taking anything away, okay? So no takeaways, and you're telling me it's also pretty grim because low energy, okay? And let's see, are there any others? Management bubble that you can't act on. Ha! I know the one. They tell you all these buzzwords and then you can't do anything about it. Just bubble. Okay, great. So guys, I've asked you your hopes and your fears. So on the hope side, it's about building communities, trust, and moving people forward, including them, making sure the world's safe, giving them open ideas, dealing and connecting with diverse audiences in a safe environment. And what you don't want is a lack of relevance, no takeaways, low energy, and a bubble. So what can we do to make sure that the bad stuff doesn't happen? We're going to work our way through that if I can add my own. So my greatest fears are there's nothing in the comments. Zombies, we get halfway through the session and actually you're also Google-eyed. And most importantly of all, I know I sound a bit crazy, but I am a professor. It is a serious session. So please take notes because I'm going to go through a lot of material. And at the time I'll be making jokes, but there are hopefully some real points in there. So let's address the lack of relevance. Let's pretend that it's not relevant, okay? What should we do? Wait until the end and then find out it's not relevant? Or should we do it sooner? Sooner! Okay, great. So the first question is, why have I asked you both your hopes and your fears? It's quite obvious that the fears are going to get me to a point where bad things don't happen to you. But most people don't do that. If you're lucky, they'll tell you what the objectives of what they're doing are, but they rarely ever ask you what your concerns are. And if you're going to lead people in a complex, fast-changing world, you have to get into the habit of finding out what's getting in their way. I'll explain really quickly. If you're getting people to do stuff which they're not used to, there's two ways you can do it. One is you can become emotionally engaging and a real sort of authentic, energetic leader. That's what they tell you in the textbooks, but I never think about it that way. I think that's the wrong approach. And I'll give you an example. Imagine that I invited you to do a charity parachute jump. So I've persuaded you to do this very dangerous thing. I mean, those of you in the UK will know, basically, everyone gets into a plane, it flies up to 30,000 feet, you jump out. If you land and everyone's safe and nothing's gone wrong, then all your friends give money to charity. That's a charity parachute jump. Very simple process. So I've got you on the plane, we're going up 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet. And then as we're just about to jump out, I turn into this inspirational leader. I say, look, what we're doing is so wonderful for the charities we're about to support. You know, our friends and families, they're giving us some money because they know it's a good thing, but they don't know how much we're committed to it. You know, they're just giving us like 20p here and there. If they really understood that we're putting our lives on the line, they would mortgage their houses, sell their cars, and give all the money to this charity. So let's show how much we're committed. In fact, I'll tell you what, leave your parachute behind and leap. What, good idea? No, terrible idea. I hope you are laughing. It's crazy. I've got you in a dangerous position, and I'm now trying to enthuse you to do even more danger. No. If you want people to move through complex, new, scary stuff, you give them 2 parachutes and a great big mattress to land on. You take away their fear. So the reason I've asked your fear is because I know nobody wakes up extra early on Monday to work with passion on stuff they don't think will work. So if I can get your fears, and more importantly, if I can get rid of your fears, then you're more likely to follow me. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of fears, because you will need this as one of the ways of getting past the blockers and the resistors, because often the reason they're not following you is because they are scared and they don't trust you because it's dangerous. So how do we do it? If you've ever watched a science fiction film, you will know how this is done. It's very, very straightforward. What happens is every single science fiction film has exactly the same script. It involves aliens. What's the job description of an alien? Travel millions of light years, come to Earth, and eat the people who are there. It's as simple as that. So they all start roughly the same way. Let's see whether that's the right one. Let's hope that's yes, it is. Okay, great. So what happens is you have a spacecraft, etc. Spacecraft crashes. Okay, fire, flames. Okay, you and I, smart people, we go fire and flames, don't go anywhere near this thing. Okay, why would we do that? Because with no training at all, we know that alien spacecraft generally are dangerous things. Okay, so we've already paid attention to that. But no, in the films, people come running. They go, let's go and see what's over there. Usually there are 2 or 3 of them. Okay, and they all come running, etc. So they rush towards the spacecraft which has crashed. Of course, when they arrive there, spacecraft from the outside always looks really small, but from the inside, you always discover it's enormous. Am I right? So they say the magic words, which are let's split up. And so they go in different directions. And we all say, don't do it. Okay. Why? Because we already know it's dangerous. So one of them meets an alien, a sort of purpley, blue, greeny alien, about to eat them. Okay. Now, you or I, we would immediately have been running the other way. But these guys, they meet the alien. They come with their laser blasters and everything, but instead of blasting the alien, they phone their friends and say, there's a life form here, etc. So you or I, we would know when you encounter danger, when I've got your fears, do I wait till the end of the session to fix them? No, I fix them literally straight away. Okay, we would get rid of the worry straight away. They never do that. The guy gets eaten. Their friends turn up 2 seconds later. Where is Fred? Can't find him. See the alien, take the alien back, lock him in the kitchen. It's called containment, okay? And having locked him in the kitchen, they then have to choose somebody to keep an eye on him. So they always choose who? Is it like the smart cadet who's going to do a great job, or like the mad pot-smoking drongo scientist? Always the wrong person. So they fall asleep, alien escapes, goes around eating everyone, and finally the only way to get rid of the alien is to blow up the whole space station. And I think technically that's what we call Plan B. So that 5-stage process is how you make sure that people around you do not worry about fear. You find out what their concerns are. You deal with them as quickly as you possibly can. If you can't, you limit them so they don't mess everything up. You monitor the chat to see what people are thinking. And if there's a disaster, you have a plan B, like tell them funny stories. Okay? So that's how you do it. I hope you've taken notes, because that is actually a method. It's a real risk removal method which leaders need to know about, i.e. you. Okay, so let's go back and have a look at our hopes and fears, and we'll finish them off. So I captured the fears over here. Things we're going to do are, we're going to make sure that you tell me if it's not relevant. Monitoring, that's your job. Management bubble stuff, if it's just nonsense, you're going to tell me again. Is that right? Yes, I hope so. I'll keep the energy up. We'll have the chapter headings so that we can stop and we can reflect a little bit. Takeaways, I've already told you to take notes, so please take notes. And occasionally I'll ask you what you're going to do differently, so we've got that as well. So if I've done a good job and you're agreeing with me, can you put a yes in the chat if you like the thought that all the fears are gone? Fears gone? Yes, fears are all gone. So now you should be more relaxed, but also think about it. If I'd run the session was a disaster, it's my problem. I'm the lousy final speaker. But now you've agreed with me on what we should do to make sure it's not a lousy session. If it's a disaster, guess what? It's your fault as well. In other words, I have just transferred the ownership and shared it with you. So not only have we de-risked it, we've made it less likely that you're going to want to block it and not trust what we're doing. Do you understand the process I've just taken you through? And on this side, I now have some elements which I can add into the session. I can start to think about diverse audiences. I can start to think about new ideas and how to deal with those. And it's a good place to be. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'll wait in the chat and just see whether there are any questions, and then we'll move on to the next chapter. Should we do that? So I'll give it 10 seconds, reflect, think. Some people are saying, yes, 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 great stuff. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let's get going. We're going to chapter 1 there. So I've nicknamed the first part of chapter 1 Back to BC. BC, of course, stands for the wonderful before COVID. Do you remember the things we did 2 years ago? They introduced us to this yellow, black, and red monster. And all of a sudden, look at the misery we put people through. Oh, my goodness. But, you know, it's quite funny because most people, they think the change process started with BC. But unfortunately, it started a lot before that. I'll try and share that with you. So I don't know whether you remember, but even before BC, what we found was that if we got a group of people together, we could show them this diagram and they would nod and laugh. I'll take you through it. It starts here where it says I have a high workload. Obviously not you. You have nothing to do, just hanging around at ECC conference all day. So you don't. So for other people, they don't have time to plan or to be creative. Okay. So they don't realize how much they're committed to, and they've only done half. So they keep saying yes more than is realistic, which pushes their workload up, giving them less time to plan or to do or to be creative. So they come close to deadlines other people think are important. Other people want to meet their goals, so they interrupt them. So they spend a lot of time restarting half-done jobs, which then pushes their workload up, giving them less time to plan or to do. So now people know they're disorganized and they can be interrupted, and then you can get away with anything. Have you seen this sort of thing happening to your colleagues at work? You're allowed to put in the chat. Oh, obviously not you. Look, before BC, everyone had stretching and challenging targets. Things were tight anyway. I know everyone's saying cost of living crisis, but if I remember rightly, 2008 was pretty grim, as was 2009, and then 2012. Then 2012, we were happy for 2 weeks with the Olympics, but it's always been grim for a while, okay? And we all kept doing the things the way we always have, and working harder and harder. So for me, even before the little red monster came along, we had this challenge. Do you recognize it? Am I getting some yeses in the chat? Yep, I've got a couple of yeses. So let me share with you what had been happening to us. And if you're less than 20 years old, you'll just have to believe me, okay? But if we put a line across here, and I make this now, and I make this the past, and I stick like 30 years in the middle, and on this axis, I put things like the pace of change, the level of complexity we have to deal with. This complexity is going to be important when we talk about mental health. things like the speed we have to go through, the network effects, the number of people on the planet interacting, all those things. Now versus the past, which one's higher? Most people quite easily say, no, okay? That's me pretending to be you, okay? How are those two crosses joined together? You're allowed to put into the chat. Is it a straight line? Is it a straight line? No, it accelerates, Eddie. It goes up and up and up, okay? Great. So the world is getting faster quite dramatically because there are more people that expand, and every time you do anything on the computer, you get network effects, 2, 4, 8, etc. That's not interesting. How fast are we learning as individual organizations and changing over the same period? Once upon a time, we could do this thing called budgets. A budget means you can see a whole year into the future. I bet your budgets are obsolete before the ink is dry. You get the money from the government and then it's gone. All sorts of new things come along. So let's think about what's happened to our ability to learn and change. Is this still faster than the world changing? Can we really still see a year into the future? I'm going to move the pen horizontally. In the chat, you're allowed to say up if you want me to go up, or down if you want me to go down. And then we'll see a shared view of what's happened in 30 years to our ability to learn and change. My guess is I'm watching the chat. Nothing in the chat, so I'm assuming I should go flat. Do you want me to go up, down, level, level, down? Someone's got down, down, slight incline. Brilliant. Okay, so guys, this is our challenge. If this is 2022 and we're back here, so 30 years, this is all 1990, maybe even earlier than that, what you realize is for all of us, sometime in the recent past, we flipped from a world where we could learn faster than the world is changing to a world which can change faster than we can learn. Do you understand what happens if the world, you can learn faster than the world is changing? When you come to do a change, any sort of change, chances are you don't even need to do the hopes and fears because everybody knows what is going to happen. You with me? You can learn, you can do pilot. If you are running a course, higher education course, you know what the materials are. You know what the campus is like. The students coming know what the previous students learned. It's easier. If you're in an organization running HR, you can put grading structures in because you know what the job should be and what it should be next year. And you know how to promote people. You know how to measure performance. This is a lovely world. Bad news, for quite a while now, it actually hasn't made any sense to do any of those things. Because once the world starts changing faster than your ability to learn, probability is the grading points you're using, like you're very good at X, are exactly different from what they actually need to be doing. For example, did you find yourself suddenly starting to work cross-functionally? Did you suddenly find that the courses were different, that your students wanted to learn different things? I've got a short video I'll share with you soon. All of those elements tell you that in this world over here, the game had already changed before that horrid little red monster came along and broke everything. And suddenly people walk up and, oh my goodness, the world's different. We've got to work differently. Kids have to stay at home. They have to be what? They have to be, we've got to work hybrid, Zoom, etc. So it had already changed. And that change is why I was able to so accurately portray your life. Because if the world's complex and changing faster than you can learn, and you don't understand that, and you keep doing things the way you always have, you'll find not only that many of the things you do have little effect, but they're actually negative, and therefore your whole world goes up in smoke. Pausing a second whilst people put into the chat, am I approximately correct? Yes, I've got some yeses. I'll take that as yes. Yep, okay. So let's have a look. Red Monster came along and we all had to figure out new things to do. So what happened was they said, oh, we'll do it virtually because everyone has to be in different places. As a human being, normally you have all these 7 senses, but all of a sudden you were in different places. So olfaction didn't work. You couldn't eat together, drink beer together. You couldn't actually touch anything. You didn't know where you were, your body, you know. And basically we got everything except hearing and vision. And even with the hearing, it went like now into mono, just mono. And with vision, all you got was the zoomy eyes, you know. And so we were, okay, we'll learn something new. So we started thinking about what can we do differently. And people like Microsoft promised us that when we went on Zoom, we would have these good-looking colleagues. Look how beautiful they all are, smiling. We went online and we discovered our colleagues looked a bit like this. And what's worse is we then discovered that we had a problem. The problem is prey animals, animals who get eaten, have their eyes on the sides. predators have their eyes in front. So if I stare at the screen like that for you, it makes you uncomfortable. If there are 20 faces, it's even worse. And so as a result, we were all exhausted in no time. And we discovered that because we lacked all the other elements for getting people to work, we weren't actually in a position where we could make sure that they actually learned and moved forward. Did that happen to you? So we're now working with technology which doesn't suit us, and we're trying to force our behavior into making it work. And at the same time as that's happening, we're also discovering things like it's quite difficult to get the work-life balance quite right, because we want to have a happy home. On the one hand, we have to make sure that things go well, so we must work harder. But having a happy home, we must also keep our other half and our family happy, so we must spend more time focused at work. So we got all these new dilemmas and conflicts, whether it was we want a successful university course, so we wanted people to have the full university experience, so we said, come on campus. Oh my goodness, you can't come on campus. Oh, should we let them on? No masks, yes masks, etc. But we had all these conflicts. These conflicts add complexity. I'm going to explain why complexity is wrecking people's mental health very shortly. So we had all those dilemmas. And then on the people side, because you guys are in HR, I think I should talk about people a little bit. We had a nightmare in terms of people. Let me push this one up for a second. We had all sorts of things which suddenly jumped out at us. Oh, how are we going to work in the future? What should we reward people for? What's our culture? How do we maintain it? Do we do anything new? How do we keep our productivity up? Who do we know who's doing well? I'll explain about mental health right now because it's really important. So I spent some time as a non-executive of a mental health trust in Northwest London. And so I'm not a professional, so don't take this as advice you live on. But what I observed really made a difference to me. The first is I was in charge of the board, which made sure that people would stay in or go out. So I had to do all the assessments and read thousands of reports. So what I concluded was, I don't think that most of the people we held were actually ill, as in mentally ill. I think they were just broken. And I think what happened was, my observation, I could be wrong. Life is complex, but you guys have energy. Am I right? So this is the level of complexity in your life, and you've got enough energy to deal with all of it, the phone calls, the boss, the emails, the bills, your kids falling ill on a Friday or whatever. So that's your level, but you can sort of cope with it, okay? And as long as you're coping with it, great. But what happens is, if you have a bad week or you move house or your boss is horrible, your ability to cope falls below the complexity. I have elderly relatives, and I've watched them. As they become less capable, all of a sudden they give up on trying. The complexity outweighs their ability to function, and they sort of almost give up and go, oh, I can't bother anymore. And I think that's the challenge. I think the mental health challenge is not all a mental health has. Yes, there are people who are ill, who have real mental illness. Every one of us will have some imbalance sometime during our lives, usually for about 2 weeks, and all our friends will say, Eddie, you've been very strange. We were wondering what's wrong with you, but actually you just had a mental health episode. But in terms of the people we end up locking up, the people who were broken down, the people who tried to commit suicide, a lot of it was, life is so bad, oh, just let it stop. So that was the element. So if you want to help people be more healthy mentally, we have to take away some of the complexity. My line with the curves is my attempt to squash all the mess and all the things people talk about, because they're always talking about, lots of patterns, cost of living, this, that, the other. But in reality, the patterns last longer than the events. There are loads of events, and we can simplify by looking at the bigger patterns. So that's a really crucial part. I'm going to stop at that point. See whether there are any questions in the comments. Does that make sense? We're going to have to take complexity out for ourselves and for everyone else. So we have to describe things in bigger pictures, and we have to start reducing the number of things which influence us. I, for example, don't have a telly at home. It's not necessary because it just brings more complexity into my house, my life. I don't even have a computer. I leave my computer at work, I go home, I do something else. So I've tried to reduce the complexity. Very insightful. Good, let's move on. I have a little clip I want to show you, because one of the things also is about how the world is going to change for you in terms of your students. and I came across this this particular little clip. It's about 2 minutes long. I don't know that you've seen it or not. I hope you have, and if you haven't, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play it for you. If it takes too long, I'll jump it, but we've got 2 minutes, haven't we? Should we do it? Okay, so here we go. I'll put it on the screen over here. There we go. Window, it says window Eddie Obeng. That sounds promising, doesn't it? There we go. Aha, okay. So close him, scroll, scroll, scroll. Okay, are you ready? Play.
Now I called a colleague from the northwest, just at the end there with the pink book.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm Izzy, a youth MP from Wigan and Lee, and I can recite the quadratic formula. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That flashcard was stuck on my wall for 3 months leading up to my GCSEs, ingrained into my memory, ready to recall and apply to a question which may or may not come up on my maths paper too. Funnily enough, it did come up on my paper, and I was prepared to answer it. However, there are a whole host of things that I have never been taught, things which will never be on an exam, and that no amount of revision notes blue tacked to my wall will prepare me for. The education system is supposedly created for young people. So please, listen when we say it is failing us. We are picked up, put down, and strapped into a never-ending conveyor belt of academic testing. For years, we've been calling for a curriculum for life, a curriculum which will see us leaving school with a greater understanding of the world around us. We are pleading for more emphasis on employability, communication skills, and personal well-being. Isn't the foundation of education creating well-rounded, well-informed young people ready for the future? So why do I, after spending 14 years in countless classrooms, feel so unsure about what's to come? Young people are more than just letters or numbers that they see on a piece of paper in mid-August. We are not a percentage of A stars to Cs. We are not evidence in an Ofsted report, and we are not a pass or a fail. The pressure students are under to perform is excessive, with the 2015 reforms in particular seeing an increase in content and more emphasis on examinations. Memorising has become a synonym for learning, and mental health has suffered as a consequence. Well-being must become a priority, and nurturing the development of young people as individuals should be the aim of education, not exam results. So no, I don't know how to maintain a good mental health. I don't understand how to pay tax, and I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. But go on, Madam Deputy Speaker, ask me, and I'll tell you all about the quadratic formula.
So I know that's a younger demographic than the demographic you're facing, but it is an interesting thing to realize that the world is actually shifting in terms of, quote, your customer base. So really, I think in moving forward, I'm going to take the rest of the session, assuming we're going to have to reinvent because the world has moved. So my task for you in this first breather is, in the chat, please share, if you can, your biggest surprise so far in terms of what I've covered. Any specifics in terms of what you've learned so far, and maybe some ideas of how you could use this in the future. Okay, so let's just take some time just to reflect, and then I'm going to move on and start figuring out what skills, how we make it work, how we influence people, how we create ourselves safe spaces, and so on. So I'm giving you a minute. I'm just going to watch the chat and listen. I'll probably sing because otherwise it's a bit boring. La 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 la. Da, 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 da. We've got some. The world has changed faster. Yeah, we've got one or two. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And read other people's comments as well, because one of the key things we're going to talk about is the ability to learn, not just for ourselves, first-hand learning, but from others and through a network, and learning from what we call curated activity. One of the biggest things we need to focus on is sometimes people, like I'm trying to do, can guide you towards where there might be a nugget. So that, plus learning from other people, plus learning more effectively yourself, closes that gap I showed with the old world and new world. Okay, great. We're getting some good comments there. Change it. Da, da. Okay, should we roll on? Let's roll on. So let's go to the next chapter. So the next chapter is really starting to look a little bit at how we might approach this a little bit more effectively. What to change to. So the most important thing I would say is I've watched people, and many of the clients I'm working with, their lives are really difficult. I mean, at the moment we're working at a conference on a web space via the technology you've got. This hybrid thing, to me, it's like an elephant with butterfly ears, okay? And everyone wants it to work differently, and they talk about it. And we know it might work differently if we really tried, but we don't know how to make it work for us. And so I often will talk about what I call digital smithing. What does that mean? When you get hold of a horse, or if you ride a horse, you'll know that horses wear horseshoes. And you'll know that horseshoes don't come fully formed to the right size for that horse. Someone has to take the bit of metal and bend it and mess it around until it suits the horse. What happens with digital technology is we don't have digital smiths. So we take a Zoom, or we take a Hopin, or we take whatever it is, and we sit Teams and we just use it as it is, or one of the learning platforms. And by doing that, we adapt to it instead of it adapting to us. And that's not the most effective way to move forward. So I find that for most of the people I'm working with, the biggest challenge they have is that they're being forced to work in a different way, but that different way doesn't match what they want to actually achieve. I'll give you an idea of my life very briefly. I'm not selling, I'm just trying to show you what my life looks like. So this is my life, this is my office. Okay, this is where I'm working from. That's why when I showed that screen earlier, it was long and thin, because I was showing it on this screen. That's where your chat messages are. That's my chair. I'm standing up at the moment. It's an electronic chair, stand-up chair. This is what I'm sharing with you, my middle screen. So let's have a look at what's on my screen in these pictures. So what's happening is on my screen, I've got a picture, and it looks a little bit like the little room we're in. And the reality of that, of course, is that in that room which I'm in, I'm actually working. So I'm lucky because I have a chap we call David Lomas, who's a techno wizard. So when we work virtually, if I don't like something, or if a customer doesn't like something, we say to David, we don't like, I don't know, whatever it is. And he'll go away, and with his team, they will code and they will fix it. So instead of just accepting technology and making it make us stressful and tired and working into the evenings and all the rest of it, instead what we can do is we can much more effectively keep changing so that we can move forward. So I'm just taking you into another room, and the whole process in that room is it's huge because it's not real space. It's not real estate which we have to pay for. And there's a screen over here. And if I'm really lucky, on the screen, we'll suddenly discover that we're looking actually at the picture of the table, of the table and the desk. Come on, quicker, faster, 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 please, faster. Oh. If it doesn't come up in a second, I'm going to just, there you go, okay? And that's where we started. So what I'm trying to explain is we don't have to be stuck with the technologies which we're given. We have to basically digital smith them to match us. That's got to be the first thing I suggest. The second thing is there is so much stuff around us. Don't get caught with whatever you're given. You know, don't get too busy. I showed you that diagram with the circles. Otherwise, you'll be pretty stuck. So as we start to think about what we do differently, you really need to focus. And the way I focus is I say, look, we know about pre-BC. We know what HR was like pre-BC. We know what the students wanted pre-BC. We know what the staff were like. We know what performance was like. But if we're on this side, what do we do? How should we be different? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'm going to look in the chat. From what I've described about the old world and new world, from what I've described about some of the stuff which is being thrown at us and the complexity and the issues around mental health and stress, if you were to give me one thing you think we would need to do in HR in order to be successful, either ourselves as an organization or for the people we look for after or for our students, what would it be? Just bang that in the chat for me. That would be great. I'll read out a couple of them, but I'm sure you can see them. Come on, let's go. A couple more things. What do we now need to think about doing differently in the future to make that work? Watching the chat, everyone's thinking, I'll be quiet while you think, so you can type lots of stuff in. They're still quiet. Trusting our people, listening to what people actually value. Hopes and fears, there you go. Giving ourselves time, managing people by their expectations. Okay, so what we're going to do is figure out how to do those things, and then you can prioritize them. So my next job is to teach you a little bit about human beings. And once you've understood about human beings, it'll be then easy to make everything else happen. So the first thing about human beings is they are weird. They're not designed for change. Does anyone here remember like 4.5 million years ago? Because I do. So 4.5 million years ago, when you went around all the higher education organizations and institutions in the UK, you didn't find people with sophisticated job descriptions like, oh, head of HR or dean or anything else. No, they only had 2 job descriptions. They were called hunters or they were called gatherers. That was their job. In the morning, they'd wake up and they'd go out hunting and gathering. Hunt, I'll put here and a gather here. I'll just put gather, it's enough, okay? And the other half would say, goodbye, make sure that you buy some milk when you're coming home and some eggs. No eggs. And no, they never did that. When you set off as a hunter-gatherer, chances are if you went out of the cave, you were going to get eaten by something else because all the other animals are better animals than you. A rabbit can run faster than Usain Bolt, fastest man on the planet. Your dog can bite better than you. You're going to get eaten. When you watch Discovery Channel, they'll tell you, mankind got this far because we had big brains. They'll draw the head like that. And they'll say we had big brains and we could use our brains to have ideas. Okay, I'll put some ideas there, and communicate. This is what they'll tell you in Discovery Channel. And because we had opposable thumbs, okay, we could use tools. And then they'll tell you all about tools and stuff like that. That's my attempt at a toolbox. And they'll say, and we also worked in teams. So this is my attempt at a team. They're all smiling. Okay, and these are their feet. Okay, feet. Okay. So they'll tell you this stuff. None of it's true. When you're out hunting and gathering and the saber-toothed tiger bursts out of the bush, ideas are not going to help you. They're going to take too long. Discussing it isn't going to help you. You're going to have to do something else. And most importantly, well, sticking your thumb out and saying, stop, tiger, that's completely pointless. So what happens instead is, you might imagine we did it as a team, but that's not true. Because guess what? Other animals also hunt in teams. Saber-toothed tigers, 300 of us, 300 saber-toothed tigers. Who's going to win? Not us. Tools are useless because they only had big stones, big sticks, and little sticks. Can't kill a tiger. What happened in reality is the moment the saber-toothed tiger bursts out there, there's a software in your back of your mind here in the amygdala, and it basically is checking for change. The moment it notices change, it goes, oh, problem. But if there's no change, it goes, great, carry on. So once it gets changed, oh my goodness, change has happened. What does it do? First most important thing it does is it switches your logical brain off. Why does it switch your brain off? Because thinking is going to be too slow. Then it makes you really scared. Why? Because if you're really scared, you're in the moment. I never met anyone say, I just meet my saber-toothed tiger, but I've got a meeting at 3. No one does that. Are you okay? So then it fills you full of adrenaline, and then you do your fighting and you're fleeing. And if you're not eaten, then it all comes back. Why am I telling you this? Because if you want people to trust you, if you want people to move forward, if you want to avoid blockers, think about what I did. I asked you your hopes and fears. Why did I ask you? Because when you ask someone, it triggers a different mechanism, higher up, more like a policeman. Why? Because thinking is very expensive. So hunter-gatherers know that they can burn 10 times as much energy with their brain as they can with muscle. So this little blue thing I've made is a policeman, which says, hey, brain, you've had an idea, turn into more food. We all have that. That's why all your ideas are also brilliant to you. So by me asking your hopes and fears, you started thinking about it, you started to own it. I told you that. By me asking you about why people are struggling with mental health, again, and so on. So what you do is you bring people into the journey by asking them. You can even give instructions. Is it okay to have a minute to think about it? That's an instruction. I could say, you have a minute. I could say, is it okay to have a minute? Oh, yeah, I think a minute is good, you'll say to yourself. And you buy in much more easily. So one of the things to realize about human beings is they're not designed for change, so you have to bring them in. Have I explained that correctly? Am I getting some yeses in the chat? So, crucial thing, we understand what we need to do in terms of change. And then at the same time, we now understand a little bit about what we need to do to try and make sure that we can bring people on board. I'm going to move to the next chapter. And the next chapter is really to help us start to think a little bit. Where are you going? You're not supposed to go there. To think a little bit about what we can actually do as a senior group together. So I've got a little story. It's about me, so I'm sorry about that, but I'll tell you my pain, and then hopefully we'll move forward. It's not a sales pitch, but I'll explain to you what happened. I've shown you my office. I've shown you where I teach. So what happened was I started this business school for grown-ups in 1995. Here I have a typical picture of what life was like in 1995. I had people, faculty, we had offices, we had courses, we had people on beanbags, all that stuff. Don't do that anymore. This is what the team looked like, and this is what a group of students now looks like. Let me explain. Of the people I was working with in 1995, what I discovered was she's really good at working with people face-to-face. He's really good when he can follow up and have a social life with people. He's a really good tech guy. This is David Lomas, the guy I was telling you about. He's very good when he can actually lecture. She's really a brilliant administrator. He's very good when there's something practical to be done, but only in real life, and so on and so forth. What I discovered is all the things I valued in these people didn't transition once I started to reinvent myself for this new changing world. So some of the behaviors which I would have said were good, some of the metrics which, had I been in HR, I would have been measuring, became obsolete the moment I started to move to a different way of working. So this is our old place of working. It's called Burt Lodge, okay? And below it is our new place of working, which is called Cube, which is the campus we work on, which is far bigger. And I've shown you what that's like. Before, this would be a room. We would run an event. Somebody would come. They'd spend some time. They'd go. This is a typical project room. So each student gets their own office with everything in it all the time. In fact, we can provide a better service. It's a different service. Are you with me? So all of a sudden, everything I valued, the people I valued, the fact that here and previously we had somebody managing the premises, making sure that suddenly that was not the key role. The key role was to make sure the students didn't get lost on the virtual campus. The key role for the tutor was to give people bite-sized learning, which they could put into practice. It stopped being standing at the front of the classroom and really impressing people. Literally, almost everything which we thought was really the right thing to do was deleted. So somewhere in the game, and I'm going to stop in a second, you're going to have to find out for yourselves what your future looks like. This is how mine looked. Literally everything which I valued broke. Everything I measured and thought was correct broke. I suspect if we are trying to do it for you, the safest way is start with the students. Find out what they really value. Don't even start with the government or where your money's coming from or anything else. Start with what do this new generation want? You know some of it because we're all in this complexity together. So you can actually tell them a little bit about what you need. So that's part of what we need. Once we've understood what they want, we can then move to start thinking about how should we configure our organization, and then we can have a good think about our people. What do we mean about grading? But all of these things are learning processes. And I explained to you, speeding up learning, crucial. Secondhand learning, learn from other people. Curation, learn from somebody who puts interesting things which may or may not be relevant around you so you can learn. So I have this here for you, and it's the last exercise I'm going to do with you. If I was to ask you again what this new world looks like, I've already told you some of the techniques. Learning fast. How do you do that? Focus on things which make you feel uncomfortable. Go where the fear is. If you see something, read something, hear something, and you feel comfortable with it, you're not learning. And anyway, it's probably already obsolete, but you just don't know yet. So focus on what you don't already know. Secondly, do like I did. Kill the aliens early. It helps other people to move forward faster and to change. De-risk, de-risk, de-risk. It really helps them. And if you do that, then the safe spaces you're talking about immediately come into practice because you know what's going to happen. Don't blindly follow anything. Somebody tells you something's best practice, good luck with that. Digital Smith everything. Change it for what you want. And if they won't change it, don't change your behavior because then you'll lose all your edge. We talked about sharing and networking, and most importantly of all, beware of what you're supposed to do, the trusted sources. In a world of this level of complexity, anyone who tells you 100% hand on heart, I'm a trusted source, I know what to do, bad news, just them saying they're trusted tells you you should never trust them, because nobody knows. The pace is too fast. So watch out for them, because they will burn a lot of your energy. If I was to ask you from an HR point of view, I'm going to go through these. What are the new roles you need to think about? Just go back through the session you've done today. You've listened to Gavin, you've heard from Carol. They've talked about different ways of working. They talked about the importance of bringing people. We've talked about selecting or recruiting people. What do you now need to recruit in this world? What are the people like? Skilling up. I've tried to highlight some of the priorities for skilling up. Performance. Whatever you think is good performance, it might still be good performance, but check it really still is good performance. In terms of compensating people, you don't want to reward bad behavior. Never, ever, ever reward bad behavior. You just get more. So what is it which you want? My guess is innovation and learning have to be built in. And I bet in the grading structures, that's probably not there. So you're going to have to look at that. You might need to talk to each other to try and figure that out as well. So I'm giving you a minute to think. I've suggested some inputs here. And then as the last bit, I'll just pick on some of the last questions, and then we'll go back to the hopes and fears, and we'll see what we have there. Okay? So anything in the chat? Remember how we did it before? Biggest surprises. Let's see what those are. Let's have a good look at biggest surprises. Let's see whether there's something you learned and there's any questions about what you learned. And then let's see also whether there's there you go. Don't hide from me. I'm here. I'm here. It's gone. Okay, I'll pull it up on the screen. There you go. And then let's see what we got in the chat. I've got being authentic is essential. Authentic is good, but if you're me and you're authentic, you're in trouble, because I'm an obnoxious, horrible person who makes a lot of trouble and doesn't listen to anyone. So if I'm my authentic self, I'm in trouble. Sometimes I have to be better than myself. Okay, we got that. We've got I need to redefine my values. I like that. That's a nice one. Come on, anything else? Any surprises, any inputs, any questions, any learning? Take time to consider before rushing in. We got celebrate difference. Oh yeah, I will tell you about difference. Difference is really important because everyone's into diversity these days. Are you guys into diversity? Have you heard this thing of diversity? It's a really complex subject. We won't go into it, but most people don't have a clue about it. They just say the words. So I've got like a 1-minute learning bite, which I'll share with you. Hopefully that will help. Adapt the technology. I love that person. Who is that? Susan. Susan, respect. Yes. Okay. Ian, how do you get everyone following the same plan? It's that engagement thing. Remember, I started and I got you to, I told you what my plan was. Do you remember right at the beginning? And then we did hopes and fears, and then we checked the fears. And I can always go back to either my plan, or I can go all the way back to the hopes and fears we did. And I can say, are we going in the right direction? And you can say, I want more of this, I want less of that. People are so good. Honestly, if you share stuff with them, especially in a complex, chaotic environment, if you're open and you, instead of being, I'm the big I am, look at me, you actually listen, ask them things like I've been saying, use questions to bypass the blocker. They always come along with you. Okay, let me give you my little 1-minute explanation on diversity and how you deal with it and what confuses people. Okay, the first most important thing is diversity is a nightmare because you can't see it. Okay, so I was born in a place called Ghana in West Africa. And when I was born in Ghana, I was Eddie. And then one day I was sent to a British public school, and overnight I became black. Who knew? Okay, so you can't see diversity. It's not a thing. It's just people labeling stuff. But what is important is when you have people who have different ways of working and different views and different ideas, how do you bring them together? So an experiment which is really interesting, and once you understand this, life gets easy. There was an experiment where they had 6 Japanese people, and they gave them a task, okay? And they measured the time of the task and how creative they were. And the Japanese people did a certain level of performance. Let's call it, I'll go a bit lower. Let's call it this level of the performance, okay? Then they took out one of the Japanese people and they put in an American in their place. Guess what happened? The American had no clue what was going on because the 5 Japanese spoke in Japanese. So what happened to the performance? It obviously went down. Then they added in a Scandinavian. The Scandinavian didn't understand the American didn't understand the Japanese, and neither of them understood the Japanese, but there were 4 Japanese people. So their performance went down. And it kept going down. Every time they replaced them with somebody else, it would go down. They increased the diversity of how people thought, the languages they used, how they approach things, and performance goes down until you get to a point where either it's a disaster or something magical happens. You get together and you go, we're going to have to work differently. Remember right at the beginning, I gave you the fears, and then we fixed the fears together. That's what we call ground rules. In other words, what are we going to have to do so we don't fail? You set ground rules here about what should we do, how are we going to work together, and all of a sudden, then you can release the performance. But many organizations and people, they just try and broaden the complexity of the people. Pushing the complexity of each interaction makes everyone more stressful, increases the pressure in terms of mental health. It's not helping. So if you're going to increase the amount of diversity of people, of height, or whatever it is you're doing, you need to set ground rules right up front so you reduce the complexity and make it easier for people to have a high performance. That's my 1 minute on diversity. Guys, we have to wrap. The time is up. How was that for you? Let's take you back to the hopes and fears, check and see whether we've done them. And then I'll turn off the screen share, and then you can tell me how it was for you. So building community. Oh, I saw Semi did that when I was explaining my life. It's really easy. You need the right technology, and then you need basically to build a community. People who want to be there, a schedule of activities, just like you do, but get the digital smithing right. If you got the digital smithing wrong, you cannot build a community. Nobody will come. And I think we've done all of them, haven't we? Diverse, new ideas. Did I do them all? Okay, let me stop sharing. There's a button here that says stop sharing. Stop sharing. Hey, I did it. Okay, guys. So I want to sort of end with just a couple of thoughts, which I hope will summarize it. COVID just made us aware of the fact the world had changed. The world had already changed before that. The reality was we were acting in what we thought was a rational way to a world which we recognized but no longer existed. COVID came along and showed us things were possible, and we did them under fear, not under creativity. And the moment the fear went away, all the restrictions started coming back in. But at the same time as it did that, it broke some of our habits. And one habit it did was it broke the fact that we like to be together to get stuff done. So now we're trying to get stuff done without being together, but we're using the wrong horseshoe. We haven't even, it's just a metal pole. So what we find in HR is that we're dealing with people. The people don't change. They want to be engaged. They don't want to be frightened. They've got their little amygdalas. They want to be part of the conversation. They want to invent. So all those elements are true. But what does change is what are the new roles? What do we value? How do we find these people? How do we check on the performance? And literally the topics you've gone through the day, hopefully those will help you. So I'm going to stop at that point. If you want more, get in touch. I'm always happy to have conversations. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm Eddie Obeng. And I think I will say a big thank you, and I will applaud your future opportunities. Capture stuff in the chat. I'll pause. Scroll back if you like. Read what other people have written. And thank you. Thanks. Bye.